Hey everybody, Dan Schinner here with Drum Talk TV at the Regal Tip booth at the NAMM Show 2016 with one of the most inspirational drummers and people I've ever met. If you don't know who this is Drum Talk TV star is David Segal. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks so much.
You're welcome. And Drum Talk TV was certainly not the beginning of your career, but the way we found David was I belong to probably 90 drumming groups on Facebook, and a lot of them overlap. And one day I saw a video of you playing,
Right.
and I noticed that something was a little bit different.
Right.
But if I was blind or I wasn't looking at my screen and I just used my ears, I never would have known that. But let's start off by you explaining to people the small, I don't know if challenge is even the right word, but what is it that makes you different that you have to work past when you first started drumming?
Well, I was born with a disease called Arthrogryposis, and I had to have probably close to over 20 surgeries, my mother tells me, that I had to have to correct different things, to make my hands were clubbed, they're fused, I have no wrists, so all that had to be corrected, and then I started drumming. When everything was corrected, I began to start drumming.
And what is it that made you say, none of this matters, I'm going to become a drummer? Because drummers use their hands.
Yeah, it looked very cool. I always felt the music in my heart and soul. So I was like, this is something that I could do. Piano was difficult for me, but drumming, it caught my attention. I began to work at it. And one of my first drum teachers, we came up with a wristband and duct tape to help me hold it. But it took many hours and just
To find the right sort of setup?
yeah, to find the right setup, to angle the drums right, at least so my hands could hit them and the stick wouldn't bounce out. So it was just through trial and error that we were able to eventually get my muscles working to be able to drum.
And how old were you when you first started that process?
Probably around, I think 12. It would be 11 and 12, something like that. And I began to try to drum to U2 records.
Yeah.
And Sunday Bloody Sunday was one of the first songs that I tried to, do.
That's awesome. It's cool that you remember that. Do you all remember the first song you ever drummed to? That's a really neat thing to remember. One of the things I like about your videos is that you play a lot of jazz.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me.
Talk about some of your biggest influences and some of the music you love to play today.
Some of my biggest influences were Buddy Rich. I got to see him. They used to have him on some repeats. He did some he did some shows in the early 70s that were repeated in New York, and I first saw him on one of these shows, and he was playing, and I was just completely blown away by him. And then as I began to study the drums with Fred Klatz, who teaches the Drummers Collective, we started to get into jazz and fusion, and I got into Billy Cobham, Narada Michael Walden, who was just, and all the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and then Vinnie Colaiuta, and Terry Bozzio, and all that, and then Neil Peart, which just was just amazing that I would try to do all the Rush songs. I really became a Neil Peart head. So, but then I got really more into jazz and tried to just hone my skills of independence and try to figure out ways to play where I wouldn't have to, where I could do the jazz ride without my wrist. So I had to manipulate the stick more with my fingers. And so I got into that, and then one of my earliest huge influences, there's a place in Santa Monica called Fred Segal's, and we were there with my dad, and Buddy Rich was there. So my dad says, I'm a kid at the time, my dad says, hey, go over and say hi to Buddy Rich. And I was like, nah, I just want to go over there and buy things. So my dad goes up to Buddy Rich and says, my son's a drummer, and he loves your playing. Buddy Rich says, that's great. Gives him his phone number in New York and says, have him call me when I'm in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I get back to New York, and I call him, and I'm so nervous. And Buddy answers the phone, and I talk to him, and we have a good chat, and he invites me to several gigs, and on the bus afterwards, and my drum teacher at the time chaperoned me to several gigs at the Seaport and SOBs. And I just got to hang out with them and talk to him. He got a pair of sticks, which unfortunately I cannot find, but just the memories of being, my drum teacher says, he goes, Buddy's taking a liking to you. And I was like, wow.
That's awesome. Now, David's also a member of Can-Do Musos. Take just a couple minutes and let people know who might not be familiar with Can-Do Musos about what the organization does.
Sure. We started around 2 years ago with Andrew Hewitt, Dom Famularo, Mike Mignona, and we all came to a Dom studio on Long Island. And rather than just it being another drum lesson, we thought of something bigger. What could we do? We all together, we said, what could we do to empower disabled musicians? And that's how it began. We want to empower all disabled musicians, no matter what instrument you play. And we got the domain. We came up with the name that day, got the domain, and started to work on it right away.
Great, awesome. And it's right on your screen if you want to look up what Can-Do Musos does with Andrew and David and Mike and Dom and many other members who have now come on board. It's very inspirational, and you don't have to be a disabled drummer to get benefits from Can-Do Musos, and they could also use your support. Any little bit helps. It's a great organization, and there's never really been anything like it before, so it's exciting to see you guys grow. And they come to the NAMM show, they speak. There's other events that you folks put on. It's really cool stuff. So I want to thank you very much for joining us here on Drum Talk TV.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It's my pleasure, Dan, and to be involved with you. And thank you for everything.
You're very welcome. Thanks. And thank you all for joining us here on DrumTalkTV.com at the NAMM Show 2016.